present to light ceremonial lamp.
Excuse me.
अमृतंगमया तमसोमा ज्योतिर्गमया
Tejasvi Surya. Mr. Tejasvi Surya.
It's always a challenge to be the speaker after Lieutenant General Haligari. Gauging by how powerful his words are post his retirement, one can only imagine how powerful his bullets were when he were in service. Friends, it gives me immense pleasure and pride to be amongst all of you today. I would like to thank the organizers of Samarpana and the faculty of this esteemed institution for having organized a patriotic event of this nature. It troubles any one of us with an ounce of conviction towards the country when we hear slogans of Bharat ki Barbadi coming from institutions of higher learning in India. And what fills my heart with pride is the fact that for every slogan of Bharat ki Barbadi which rose just a few days ago in this country, you today rose a slogan for Bharat Mata ki Jai, and that gives me Friends, General already spoke about the threats that India is facing from outside its borders. He also gave all of us the confidence that so long as there is the last man and the last bullet in an Indian soldier's gun, you and I can be here safely. We discussed and deliberated about the threats that India is facing from outside. I am not a man from the army. I am a civilian, just like all of you here. But even I owe a certain responsibility as a citizen of this country. As a student, as a lawyer, as a citizen, there are certain duties and responsibilities that I owe towards this country. If the army is there at the borders to protect the country from the threats without, you and I are the soldiers who have to protect the country from the threats within. And I would like to take a few minutes of all of your time to deliberate upon those threats which are trying to break India from within. The enemy who is outside the border is far less dangerous than the enemy who is within all of us. Friends, Marcus Tullius Cicero, a very popular Roman philosopher, had once very insightfully remarked, and I quote, "A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and he carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. His lying whispers rustling through the alleys, heard in the very halls of the government itself. For the traitor appears not as a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rocks the very soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist anything. A murderer is less to be feared." What are these forces that I am speaking of, which is trying to break India? In more ways than one, all of us have to be grateful to what happened at JNU. The reason for that is, today things are very clear amongst all of us. Those forces which are pro-India and those forces which are anti-India. The lines of division is very clear. I would like to just take and elucidate upon one slogan which all of us repeatedly heard on television channels. And I would like to try exposing the nexus that exists behind such slogans and what this nexus is trying to do to this country. What was the slogan that all of us heard? अफजल तेरे अरमानों को मंजिल तक पहुंचाएंगे, भारत की बर्बादी तक जंग रहेगी, जंग रहेगी, भारत तेरे टुकड़े होंगे इंशाअल्लाह, इंशाअल्लाह, लाल सलाम, लाल सलाम. These were the slogans that all of us heard repeatedly on television. It baffles me to understand how a communist slogan of Lal Salam was sung in synchrony and harmony along with Bharat Ke Tukde Honge and along with chants celebrating Afzal. Doesn't this appear to be very strange? Because around the world, the communists as well as jihadi separatist forces are against each other. Whereas in you are finding them as common bedfellows. And this is what is troubling. General Halagari was speaking of the geostrategic importance of India. And India is rising as a very powerful regional power as well as a global power. There are many factors and actors within and without who are trying to undermine the growth of India as a regional and a global superpower. And these forces are trying to manipulate the way we think, the way we speak, and are trying to adulterate the purity of public discourse in India. And that is what all of us must be cautious about. Let me just give you two examples. All of you may have witnessed protests against the proposed nuclear plant in Kudankulam. As engineers, I'm sure all of you have read about it in the newspapers, that there were widespread protests when India wanted to set up a nuclear power plant supported by Russia at Kudankulam in Tamil Nadu. Protests went on for a month, for 45 days, for a period of 2-3 months. Intelligence reports to the government said that this is not a sporadic and a natural protest, this is an organized protest. Enquiry was set up. And the reports of the inquiry said that large amount of funding was made from outside sources to NGOs in and around Tamil Nadu and Kudankulam, which orchestrated protests against the Kudankulam power plant because the power plant was supported by Russia, and many Western source powers did not like the fact that India was collaborating with Russia in building nuclear power in India. Since the last 1 year, 10,000 and plus NGOs and their foreign donations have been put under scanner. You may be surprised to know that each day all of our Prime Minister and people in government are speaking of foreign direct investment. The fact is that we would be happy if foreign direct investment is happening in our companies which produce defense equipment. We would be happy if foreign direct investment happens in companies which are providing employment to our young people. But in the last 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, 7,000 crore rupees foreign funding came to NGOs in India, whose work is unknown. What is happening? And what are these factors? What are these NGOs? What are these institutions who are apparently trying to serve and help people doing? It raises a lot of questions which as civilians you and I need to answer. In addition to that, what is happening in the northeast part of this country must trouble all of us. Since the creation of Bangladesh in 1971, the infiltration of illegal immigrants into India through Bangladesh and India's porous border has gone unabated. Military reports say more than 3 crore illegal Bangladeshi immigrants are in India. If any one of you hail from Chikmagalur or Kool, you would be aware that most of the plantation workers who come here are from Bangladesh. This is creating a very serious geostrategic and geopolitical threat to the northeast part of India. And what are our governments in northeast India doing? The governments in Assam, the governments in Tripura, the governments in West Bengal. There was an SMS going around, you may have noticed it, that if you by chance end up as an illegal immigrant in the United States, you would be sent back immediately. If you end up as an illegal immigrant in the Saudi Arabia, you would be capitally punished. If you end up as an illegal immigrant in Europe, in England, there are chances that you may be deported to the country, your original country within 24 hours. But if you end up as an illegal immigrant in India, be rest assured that the government is immediately going to give you voter card, Aadhaar your hearts. More than 3 crore Bangladeshi immigrants have come into India, and all of us are seeing. The entire demography in Assam has completely changed in the last 10-15 years. If you have friends from the northeast coming from Tripura and Assam, talk to them once. More than 50% of the assembly constituencies in Assam has Bangladeshi voters as the decisive voters. The decisive voters who are Bangladeshis today will be the lawmakers tomorrow. That day may not be too far when we have a Bangladeshi as an MLA, as an MP, as a minister representing the voice of Indians in Indian assemblies and parliaments. This is a threat that you and I must be aware of. What happened to Kashmir in 1990? If you and I do not raise our voice against the immigration that is going on in Bangladeshi immigration that is going on in the northeast, if you and I don't raise our voice, may happen to people in Assam, people in Tripura. But these facts are not highlighted in the media. These issues do not become the main discourse of our country. On the other hand, non-issues garner complete media attention in this country and ensure that the country's attention is diverted to issues which do not make any sense or any political importance. General Halagari was mentioning about the Red Corridor from Pashupati to Tirupati. You may all be aware of the political changes that took place in Nepal in the last few years. Nepal, which was the last Hindu monarchy, was made into a communist republic, and the first result of such action was that until the tradition that the first elected Prime Minister of Nepal's first foreign trip would be to Delhi was changed, and the first elected Nepali Prime Minister, Prachanda, he made his first official visit to China and not to India. Since then, there have been various efforts made to strengthen the Naxal activities going on from Pashupati to Tirupati. It baffles me when people like Arundhati Roy come and speak and say Naxalites are Gandhians with guns. It churns my stomach when people say and celebrate the death of 73 CRPF Jawans and justify the killing of our Jawans and celebrate their death, saying that no Naxalites are people fighting for the code, they are no tribals. But how did these poor tribals get Nitzas rifles? How did these poor tribals get AK-47 guns? How did these poor tribals get landmines? These questions, these uncomfortable questions are not asked, and these questions are not answered. Along with this, what baffles me more is the fact that a Yaqub Memon and an Afzal Guru's hanging is questioned not by people who constitute the fringe, but by former home ministers of this country itself. You may have read in the newspapers in the last 2 days, the former home minister of this country makes a statement that Afzal Guru may have been given an unfair trial. Do not forget that it was the same home minister who was in power when he was hanged. Dr. Ambedkar had so proficiently said, there may be a day when India will have to choose whether we will stand and whether we will make our political ideologies and opportunisms as a first priority, as a country as a first priority. Friends, we all may get emotional and clap when we hear the stories of a brave martyr. But each time I hear a story of a Sandhi Kuni Krishnan, 26 years old dead, their martyrdom, but we are here to question as to why were they made martyrs. Giving thanks to an army officer is as important as ensuring that there will not be a martyr tomorrow. And to ensure that there will not be a martyr in future, as civilians in a political democracy, you and I should be aware of our rights. For eternal vigilance is the price for freedom. And that vigilance is what, as civilians, you and I must understand. The last 2-3 years, there have been intelligence report which says think tanks in India, media organizations in India are being heavily funded by outside interests which are inimical to the interests of India to change the public discourse in India. Let me just give you 2 examples. All of you remember the Italian Marines case. The case where 2 Italian Marines shot on Indian soldiers, Indian fishermen, and there were attempts made to prosecute them and bring them to justice. What happened? Do you know who was the principal negotiator for Italy interests? It was the Archbishop of Kerala. The Archbishop of Kerala wanted to negotiate with the Indian government to ensure the release of the Italian Marines. Instructions came from Vatican. An Indian Archbishop is doing this. All this information is available on the newspapers. It's just a click or Google away, that's all. But the question is, again, what Ambedkar asked, are we going to place a religion and creed over the country, or are we going to place the country over religion? Not just that. When slogans which can never be defended were raised, we had eminent intellectuals and luminaries who came and defended those slogans, and the people who raised those slogans as their right to freedom of expression. And those who questioned that were called as communalists and fascists. People even started questioning as to what this idea of nationalism is all about. They asked what nationalism is. Why don't somebody who is opposing these people's sloganeering come up with a definition of nationalism? Let me give them an answer today. I do not want to define what nationalism is, but let me tell you what nationalism is not. I don't know what nationalism and what its various hues and colors of nationalism may be, but I will tell you definitely unequivocally what nationalism is not. Bharat ki barbadi is not nationalism. Bharat ke tukde hone is not nationalism. Afzal tere armanon ko manzil tak pahunchane is not nationalism. Let me now tell you what nationalism is. A highly educated lady, Kiran Rao, Amir Khan's wife, said, India is an intolerant country, I want to get out of this country. That goes for freedom of expression. An uneducated Hanumantappa Gopal's wife said, I have given birth to a daughter, I will raise her like a son and put her in the army so that she will be. That is nationalism. No country will allow freedom of expression to subvert freedom of expression itself. Can you imagine a cultural celebration in Princeton University or Harvard University? No country's constitution allows for freedom of expression to the extent that it subverts the sovereignty, integrity and unity of the country. That has to be made clear. That is the law in India. That is the law even in the United States Supreme Court rulings. But in India we are being told that no, these are not issues which matter. Analyzing the last 2 months, my dear friends, I have come to this conclusion. There are two sets of people in India. The first set of people cry and shed tears when army men die, when soldiers die. The second set die when terrorists die. The second set shed their tears when terrorists are hanged. And the popular political discourse in India, according to our newspapers, tell that if you belong to the first category, that is, if you cried for the death of a soldier, you are a criminalist, you are a fascist. But if you cried for the death of a terrorist, you are a secular and you are for freedom of speech. If this is what freedom of speech and communal and these terms are going to mean, let me tell all of them who are trying to tell and pervert the discourse of this country that as young people, we are proud to be these sort of communalists who are going to shed tears for our soldiers than shedding tears for terrorists. Lastly, friends, a look at the map of India will reveal the kind of forces that are at play in India trying to break India. Let me just try taking you through the map of India. Kashmir. You take the literature of India, take Sanskrit, take Kalidasa, take Varahamihira. You will find hundreds of instances where people have written about Kashmir. People have written about how Kashmir is an integral part of India. But today, the voice of separatism, the voice of Azadi is heard from the nooks and corners of Kashmir. The reasons for that are many, and that may be a reason for another debate and discussion. But the fact that you and I must be cautious about is that Kashmir is an extremely important geostrategic piece of land for India. If we lose Kashmir, if we lose an inch of Jammu and Kashmir, it is an open welcome for invaders to invade right into India. It was not for nothing that a Colonel Vasant and the likes of him gave up their lives. It was because they wanted to save this land that they gave up their lives. The question of Armed Forces Special Power Acts comes into play. You will be reading in the newspapers that this is a draconian act. The army is misusing this act. This act has to be repealed. A small research into who are these people batting for removal and repeal of AFSPA will enlighten all of us as to where they are getting the money to protest against AFSPA comes from. You have tons and tons of intelligence report which says the poor Naxalites are being given AK-47s from Pakistan's ISI. You also know that the Gilgit-Baltistan region of Kashmir is being softly peddled by China so that it will create an ambivalent situation for India. These are geostrategic battles which are being played every single day. Come down a bit. Look at what is happening to Nepal. jihadi networks into India, and recruiting sleeper cells inside of colleges. Till very recently, our Home Minister was making statements that India is not worried about jihadi terrorism because there is no homegrown terror threat in India. But friends, tell me honestly, doesn't it pain when we read in the newspaper that boys and girls of our age, 22, 23, 24, are being caught at airports and they were trying to go out of the country to join ISIS? Why did a Sunday Puni Christian have to give his life if this is what is happening in the country? Come to the northeast part of India. What is happening in Nagaland? What is happening in Arunachal Pradesh? So unless all of us ensure that there is a robust public discourse which keeps political parties, irrespective of whichever party they are, in check, and we ensure that national interest is paramount, martyrs will keep wars will keep happening, terrorist activities will keep happening, Naxals will start growing up. This will continue. So what are we supposed to do? Friends, there are two things which are extremely important for all of us as civilians to understand. While we may not be equipped to take a gun and go and fight in the battlefield, you and I must exercise basic rights. And we must be active participants in a democracy. And by that, I mean not just voting once in 5 years, which is also extremely important and essential. But along with that, we must contribute to the discourse that goes on in the country.
Copy the last part.
By that I mean,
Last part again.
let me tell you a recent example, again picking up from the last 2 days newspaper. All of you are following the news story of Ishrat Jahan's encounter. Ishrat Jahan's encounter was called as and dubbed as fake. Everywhere, the last 3 years since the time the encounter took place, throughout the media, throughout international circles, an opinion was created that minorities in India are being hounded and fake encounters are being done. What did the government in power do then? There were specific intelligence inputs which said that the people traveling in that car who were killed in the encounter were LET operatives. The government had this information. The government knew specifically that they were LET operatives, they were terrorists. Which 19-year-old amongst us carries an AK-47? Which 22-year-old amongst us carries grenades? And how many of our cars have 30 kg of RDX in it? But the government of the day went ahead and filed an affidavit before the court and said, no, we don't have concrete information to say that they are terrorists. All of this was done with a specific agenda to ensure that one particular person will not become the Prime Minister. This again brings us to question, what are we placing as our priority? There was one particular slide which General Saab displayed, which said, nation comes first. The men with me come second, and my come first comes last. When in a political system, the interest of the nation goes last and the interest of a family becomes first, then this is what will happen to this country. And that is specifically why, as aware citizens, you and I must stand up and speak about this. In addition to that, my dear friends, if people are going to tell any one of us that India is a weak country, that we are not capable, we are not militarily strong, let us give them a very pointed answer. When the world collapsed at the feet of Alexander, it was our ancestors who stopped his world conquest. When the world decided that they couldn't stand up to the Roman Empire, when the world crumbled before the tyranny of Islamic rule, when in 30 years' time Iran became completely Islamized, when Europe became completely dismantled and the Ottoman Empire was completely shaken off its roots in a matter of 20-30 years. There is only one civilization in the world, only one culture in the world which has survived a span of 10,000 years, and that is mine and your civilization, which has survived it. There are two battles to be fought. The first battle at the borders, which the Indian army and the men in uniform are more than capable of handling. The second is the one which you and I must fight. This is the battle of ideas. Parashurama had once said, Agratas chaturo vedaha, Krishtatam sasharam dhanuhu, Idam brahmam, idam kshatram, shapadapi sharadati.
I don't know what is the last part. So, increasing.
What an amazing clarity. What Parashurama had said was, in front of me, I have the intellectual ability which I have gained by the study of the four Vedas. Along with that intellectual ability, I also have the power of my weapons. If you are going to challenge me in a battle of weapons, I am ready for that with the twang of my bow. If you are going to challenge me in a debate of ideas, then I am ready for both Shastra as well as Shastra. That was what Parashurama had told the people of this country. Today, as people, as civilians in the society, you and I must start understanding that you and I play a decisive and a pivotal role in this battle of ideas. As civilians, that is what our primary role is. This country did not become great overnight. The last month or so I was at the Nathula Pass, the pass which connects India with China. 19,000 odd feet high, where the supply of oxygen is limited. The kind of pictures which Lieutenant General Saab was earlier showing. Looking at the army soldiers there, patrolling the borders, one question came to me. What is it that they are trying to protect? Because all around me, what I saw was lumps of snow and barren mountains. Wherever I saw, there was not a blade of grass. Whichever side I looked, there was no sign of civilization or living possible. But still, the glimmer of hope in the army man's eyes, the sense of dedication to duty, was utmost. Then the question came as to what is he trying to protect? What is he trying to give his life for? Is he trying to lay down his life for this land where a blade of grass doesn't grow? Is he trying to lay down his life for those heaps of snow or those barren high mountains? Why is he ready to die? And then I happened to read there the same quote which Hindu Savalya mentioned, there is no better life and no better death than dying for the ashes of our fathers and the temples of our gods. It is this abstract idea of what makes us a country, what unites us as a people, which ensures that a man standing at the border is ready to give up his life. And it is this nation, this idea of the nation, is what we must protect. Let me leave you all with the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Friends, it's a travesty of our history that people who were intellectuals in the true sense, people who were nationalists in the true sense, were relegated to the sides of our textbooks. And one such person is Dr. Ambedkar. Why I wanted to leave you all with the thought of Dr. Ambedkar is that today, when a particular organization in a particular university in this country is raising slogans to destroy and break India, they are doing that holding a banner which has Dr. Ambedkar's photo on it. When somebody is organizing a protest to break India from within and try to ensure that there will be fights and bloody revolutions in India, revolutions with banduk, they are again calling the name of Dr. Ambedkar to justify their unjustifiable actions. But what did Ambedkar really stand for? Imagine a person belonging to a community who was not touched, who could not even dream of entering the precincts of a classroom and a school, whose contemporaries had never seen the insides of a classroom or a blackboard, goes on to achieve multiple PhDs in economics, politics, sociology from the best of the universities in the world. We don't call him Pandit. But a person who couldn't even pass his graduation, we call Jawaharlal Nehru as Pandit in this country, and that is the biggest travesty of justice that has happened in this country. But Ambedkar knew that there would be a time in the near future where India will have to stand up and make one big resolution. He knew that there would be a time in the very near future where people will have to decide whether they will place their feet first or their nation first. I would like to leave you all with his poignant and insightful words. This was the last speech that Dr. Ambedkar delivered to the Constituent Assembly of India before the country adopted its constitution. Today, when intellectuals are coming and preaching us that there is no such thing as nationalism, but there is only something called as constitutional patriotism, it would help us to put the speech of Dr. Ambedkar at their face. Because as the father of the Constitution, this was his idea of what constitutional patriotism meant. He says, on 26 January, India will be an independent country. What would happen to her independence? Will she maintain her independence or will she lose it again? This is the first thought that comes to my mind. It is not that India was never an independent country. The point is that she once lost the independence she had. Will she lose it a second time? It is this thought which makes me most anxious about the future. What perturbs me greatly is the fact that not only India has once lost before her independence, but she lost it by the infidelity and the treachery of some of her own men. In the invasion of Sindh by Muhammad bin Qasim, the military commanders of King Dahir accepted bribes from the agents of Muhammad bin Qasim and refused to fight on the side of their own king. It was Jaichand who invited Muhammad Ghori to invade India and fight against Prithviraj Chauhan and promised all help. When Shivaji was fighting for the liberation of Hindus, the other Marathas and the Rajput kings were fighting the battle on the sides of Mughal emperors. When the British were trying to destroy the Sikh rulers, Gulab Singh, the principal commander, sat silent and did not help to save the Sikhs. In 1857, when a large part of India had declared war of independence against the British, the Sikhs stood and watched the event as silent spectators. Will history repeat itself? It is this thought which fills me with anxiety. This anxiety is deepened by the realization of the fact that in addition to our old enemies in the forms of caste and creeds, we are now going to have many political parties with diverse and opposing